What's your favorite viral movement that happened when running outbound campaigns?
The most viral kind of general trend, I think, this year or last year is just clay. So I think you hear a lot, and it's a bit of a definitely the wave. I think the other one is the NA10.
How you spot if an idea is going to scale or flop? Or you still it's just a gut feeling?
Essentially, you're speaking to a lot of people, but nobody's buying. Like, nobody's willing to. They say that they're interested, but nobody's buying. It's most likely a flop.
People watching who want to go and get into growth, GTM or sales, what's the first step they should take today?
A lot of podcast videos of different people on YouTube, people that run very sophisticated systems. Um, you need to binge watch, like a lot.
Frank, welcome to the show. I'm glad you could make the time to be on here. So yeah,
Yeah, literally just jumped off the plane a couple hours ago and straight into the pod.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's how you roll. I don't know. It's been ages, or at least a couple years I've known you, and your calendar has always been booked. And another thing is like being a founder, you always take these demo calls, even
Yeah.
to this day. Yeah.
Last
So
week I did about 50 or so. Still, still to this date. So, yeah.
yeah, I have a couple weird questions. It's not coming from my audience or like people in my community. What is up with the bacon first? And
Yeah.
then is Star Wars just like a wordplay, or like does it have any like deeper meaning to it?
Let's start with bacon. Naturally, most of the software, especially in marketing and sales technology, sell into the US. So we sell typically to sales teams, right, or sales functions. And if you're familiar, or if you ever worked in the US or in the US sales culture, that you have ingrained in your business, it could be also business outside the US, but you're very very US driven. So there are markets like Israelis, as an example. In Israel, it's also very much US like, and there's a saying typically in sales, let's bring home the bacon. And from an individual standpoint, it's if you're a sales rep, for you, bacon means commission. So you are closing the deals and you're bringing home the bacon, which is the commission. The wife wants to see the bacon, Um, um, so yeah, if you just Google it, you'll see that the man is bringing sort of bacon home. In other parts of the world, typically it's called the bread. Let's say in Europe, it's
Yeah,
typically called the bread. I'm not sure what would be, in India right now,
it's
kind of
bread.
similar.
It's
Yeah.
just it's just a version of bread in India. Yeah,
Roti, right? Is it roti?
yeah, yeah. It
Yeah.
is already.
I
Yeah,
used to live in Ahmedabad for a while, so that's why I'm familiar
nice.
with India for a fair bit. So yeah, that's with the bacon, and so nobody was really using it when we started the company, and I was in sales for over 10 years, and you want to build affinity with your audience, and so one of the things you can do is if you have a thing, right, that's associated, something from a slang, or it could be like an emoji, literally. So if you go to my profile today, there's literally a bacon emoji in my profile, and it actually says right now, "I help you bring home more bacon." So that's all kind of on that, and I have a lot of people just literally just only connecting with me from a sales community in the U.S. in particular, and they say, "Frank, I love bacon," and that's pretty much the only reason why they want to connect with me. So there's a cultural sort of affinity there. And then on the second one, Star Wars. No, actually, nothing comes from Star Wars. I think when we thought about how do you name a company, what I thought to myself, damn, there is no software that's known as the Forge, and so I thought to myself, we sell to salespeople, and a lot of agencies as well. So why can't we just Salesforge? It's just that the only caveat there is it's very close to Salesforce, So and people still make typos today, Even I make sometimes, I would just type something up, and it goes out as Salesforce out, something
Yeah.
rather than Salesforce. So that's the only caveat there. So, yeah.
So you made the connection. So may the force instead of may the force be with you.
Yes, yeah.
This is
I mean, you can do a bunch of rules, really cool skits, on Star Wars and a bunch of other things. But yeah, you can play around with these words quite nicely. Plus, you can play around with Salesforce a bit nicely. As in, if you're installing Salesforce, then you may as well get the Forge,
yeah.
with it. So there's also that sort of stack affinity sort of that you're building. Because yeah, many of our customers do use Salesforce, but also HubSpot, etc. But yeah, we will be going up into sort of more enterprising markets ourselves in the coming years. So we believe that most of our customers there will be using Salesforce most of the time. So yeah.
Nice, nice. So it might be a little personal question.
Mhm.
So if you were to name a comic, a book, or a movie based on your career journey, especially in SaaS,
Yeah.
what would you name it? Or if there's already one that I want that name for my biography.
I mean, there was another sort of skit that we did, with Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, we do sell quite a lot of software. We do 600 plus demos on a monthly basis, so it does feel like a bit of a Wolf of Wall Street, a lot of activity. But instead of having all these hundreds of sales reps, it's just 6 sales reps that we have in the team, to be honest, in total. So quite a small team for the volume that we do, really. Yeah, yeah, it would be Wolf of Wall Street, I would say.
Nice, nice. So another news, like congratulations on joining Clay as a consultant, GTM consultant. So what excites you about GTM right now?
I mean, like we don't really consult or anything. I mean, we're users of Clay. We integrate with Clay, so we have native integration with Clay, in Salesforge, and we also invested back in the round when they did a community round also. So we decided also to do that. Um, Sorry, what was your question?
My question was, what excites you when it comes to GTM in this
Ah,
space at this
in
moment?
GTM.
Yeah.
I think with everything that happened sort of 2 years ago, with LLMs and ChatGPT, and essentially where a lot of automation kicked in, and like even NA10 and like things like that. I think being able to do more with less is what excites me a lot. I was always and I still am always the sort of the efficiency guy. How can you drive a ton more output with very little input? How can you do that? And there's a lot of science, some magic, let's call it that way, or some art to it. So it's some things you get lucky, etc. But there's a lot of science or system building of psychology that you have to put into this. But suddenly, with all the stuff that was happening on the LLM front, and like automations, NA10 and Clay and etc., suddenly you can unlock your imagination of what's possible. And this led the start of AI agents in sales, and a bunch of other industries. So we built our own AI SDR called Agent Frank, which runs fully autonomously across email and LinkedIn as of recent as well. That has been rolled out. And my big belief is just generally where the whole economy is headed, not just in sales but overall, is that you will see humans working with agents in one single environment. So in Salesforge, that's exactly what you can do. You can, run your own campaigns as an agency or, as a sales team. But in tandem, you spin up agents that may go after a subset of your market or the long tail. Let's say, you'll have maybe humans going after, let's say, the key accounts, and agents going after everything else, right? So that is very typical kind of setup that we have. There's other things where you won't be able to use ever automation. So like cold calling, for example, is totally banned in the US
In
and
the
Europe.
US,
So
yeah.
yes, so then you can't really use autonomous systems for that. You need an opt-in to call people. So we use autonomous systems on inbound to call, but we don't. But that's just build something via an automation, and or for example social selling, right? So at the end of the day, people buy from people. So you want to be, you know, uh, that social selling will be still done by a human, whether it's my LinkedIn profile or the profiles of my reps. Because they naturally also have an interest, to warm up their audience or just talk about the way that they do things, and that makes it easier for them then when it comes to doing outreach, then to actually get people on a call and convert them. Um, yeah, and I think there's a lot more coming, to be honest. And I think the next layer of what's coming, which excites me a lot, is what I call the data layer. The data layer means that a lot of the decisioning that is happening in sales today that is done by humans and then maybe executed by AI agents. I think the next wave that we're headed into is that a lot of the decisions will be done by big data. So because suddenly we could automate a lot more, there's more emails going out, maybe, or there's more LinkedIn messages or calls being done, whatever, There's suddenly a vast amount of data that exists out there. And with that, you could sort of, what's called cluster and label that data, and then use that data in a lot of very smart ways. So, for example, you could predict when's the best time to actually send out an email to your prospect to have the highest probability of them actually responding. that's kind of an example of applications of machine learning on the data set, and then sending out emails, not just whenever you want to, kind of whenever the email goes out, but no, you actually are sending emails when you have the highest prediction essentially to get a reply back. So that's just an example of replies or calls, or even generating an email copy and predicting which email copy will resonate best with that particular buyer. So again, you can run a prediction, and then you can run LLMs on GenAI front to then actually compute. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that's coming from a data standpoint, and we see very similar examples, let's say in the world of Google Ads, for example. So Google naturally and Facebook, so many Meta, they do have vast amount of data that they leverage for the ad auctions and for different stuff. And that's how they got really big. And suddenly it's very, very much impossible to compete against Google and Meta, et cetera, because of the essentially what's called a data mode that they have. So I think we're going to see something similar in the world of sort of outbound, or just generally sales execution, because we have still none of that right now in the world.
Nice. So now there's a one-liner question. So there's a lot of people that say growth hacking is basically dead. So what would be your counter, but in one line?
I mean, you could say that growth hacking is done by many different people, whether that's a GTM engineer or sales or rep or CEO or founder. They do growth hacking. I don't think it's dead at all. If anything, it's well alive and massively growing because of LLMs, and suddenly you can build some stuff in Lovable and whatever you name it. So I think with all the tech that has been that has evolved in the last couple of years, you can do a ton more growth hacking, to be honest, not less. So, I don't think it's dying anytime soon. And the reason why it's not dying is because, let's think of it kind of simplistically. A lot of channels are becoming very saturated. It doesn't matter whether it's a cold email or calling or advertising, whatever. So you have to think outside the box of how you drive demand for your business. And the answer typically to that is growth hacking. So yeah, you have to you have to know how to hack growth for your business, irrespective of the saturation levels of what's happening in the market, what's happening with the competitors. You still have a goal, which is to grow. So yeah.
Awesome. So if we can say it's not dead, it's kind of evolved, so you have to keep up with whatever's working.
Yes.
I get it. Right. So you built Salesforge to approximately 3 million ARR in 12 months with a very small team. So what would you say your secret is for building something so big, so fast with such a small team?
So 3 million was actually pretty tough. A lot has happened in that first year. Now we're in year 3 right now already. But in the first year when we was initial scale up, I think there's a kind of few things that need to happen. Typically, you need to have a big TAM and a big problem to be solved. I think you kind of have to look at that simplistically. A big TAM, typically by default, you just take the US and that's big enough, and that's it. So if you're just building a product or whatever problem you want to solve it for one market, solve it for the US, don't worry about the other markets. And then, you have to find that big problem, something that hasn't been really solved yet, and it's naturally a painkiller, not a vitamin, right? So, and so back in the days, so I was in sales for 10 years, and I had in my previous gig a sales team of 50. And then what happened was I exited, and then thought to myself, what is the problem that I could solve? And so I wanted to solve what we call the pipeline building space. And you have 3 channels there. You got the email channel, you got the LinkedIn channel, and you got the cold calling channel. The 3 ways how you actually acquire customers systematically. And so to me, email is the basis of all communication. I thought you really have to start with email, and then you can, do LinkedIn later, like we do it today, or you can do cold calling later, whatever, right? But really, the base of everything is email. And then back then, it was the deliverability was awful, So you thought, so if emails don't get delivered, then nothing else matters really, So that's why we started to dabble into that topic. And I think our first solution was simply building Salesforge. So Salesforge essentially used to just send great emails with GPT-3 back then, and then GPT-4, whatever, to every single recipient. So, and that was the first sort of thing that we did. But even though we acquired 100 customers in a month or two, we still didn't see that hockey stick. We didn't believe the hockey stick will be there in terms of the growth. So what do you do in that case? So you can change your product, to in many different ways, and then kind of hope for the best in a way. But you had very tough competitors in the cold email space that you had to go up against. So instead of kind of trying to be, let's call it, better than competitors or whatever, take another maybe mini pivot or whatever, we thought to ourselves that actually when we talk to our customers, you realize that within the conversations of talking to our customers, the reason why we were not converting some of the customers was the email infrastructure piece. And essentially, we understood that unless you set up domains and email accounts, unless we help them to do that, nothing will ever fly. So then that's what led us to build in the second product instead of kind of focusing on the first product. So we decided to park the Salesforge and the development of that for some time. And then, we rolled out Mailforge. So Mailforge, it was our first cold email infrastructure product, and we were the first email sequencer that has its own email infrastructure. And the way that it has evolved today we have 4 infrastructure by now. So and so all of them have disadvantages and advantages, and there's no sort of bulletproof infrastructure. But yeah, essentially the unlock for the scale was actually, funny enough, by solving 2 problems, not one. So because you can't run cold emails unless you had the infrastructure, right? So what was happening back then is we were setting up manually domains, me and my co-founders, for our customers, but it wasn't scalable. So we said to ourselves, then we have to solve this. So then when we shipped Mailforge, which took us quite some time to build it as well, like three months for the initial build journey. So we launched Mailforge. With Mailforge, we didn't just plug in all the email accounts and domains to our customers within Salesforge, but we were also able to kind of plug into the rest of the ecosystem. Yeah. And it just went wild as a result, and that brought us customers naturally, not just from Mailforge but also Salesforge. So typically, if you speak to a lot of investors or some smart people, they would tell you never build a second product that early, right? So, but we went against all the typical wisdom. We're like, nah, whatever, let's go and solve the second product and second problem, and we have a second product. And sometimes that is that. And but at the end of the day, every smart founder will just tell you, just listen to your customers. Why they're not buying your stuff. What's stopping them? And if something's stopping them, solve that. Either you go and plug it in with some API that you find from another vendor, or just build it yourself. Don't waste, because time is money, especially when you're early stage startup, right? You need to have the momentum. You need to have motivation as well as a co-founding team. So yeah, and I would say, so on one hand is the product strategy was, so what we call this, what's called the software compound model. You can read about it on the internet. There's a good article by Rippling, essentially selling multiple products to the same user and to the same buyer. If you're able to do that, it's like Salesforce and HubSpot. They also have multiple things to sell, or like Apple, also multiple things to sell. We just started it like super early in the first year. Then that's a really good strategy in order to get like really, really big. So you need to figure out ways how to sell multiple things. And so the other thing that helped us, I think, is the domain expertise. So because I was in sales for over 10 years, it was essentially me selling to other heads of sales, a lot of the tech and outbound agencies, etc. So that helps massively, I would say. So if you're not a domain expert in the field, I don't think that you're able to build. You have them. So essentially, you will need to run too many user interviews, too many sessions, etc., to figure out what you need to build. Like, we don't have to run that many sessions because ultimately, I'm building the software for myself. Yeah. And what has happened over time is the software was, we still have great software. It's just that a lot of folks started to copy us over time, and the market has just generally grown massively. So.
No, like there's everyone, like even on LinkedIn, I get like tens of DMs. It's literally the same thing that they're selling, but they're like, okay, ours is better, theirs is not.
So if everything gets commoditized, right, because it's easy to build software, and it's kind of the same stuff, okay, so what do you do actually tend to grow, right? Because the fact that you have more competitors, you have to do something about it. So we expected more competitors, to be honest, back then. Like, there's no way. So then we saw our competitors started to do email infrastructure. They came after us, and they're much bigger than us. And it's funny that the big boys back then did not have infrastructure, and we did. So we definitely saw that they copied us on that front. But I mean, kind of was obvious as well, right? Why wouldn't you do that? And so the interesting part, I think, about us is that we built a lot of things that we're the first ones to build it in the space, and then the bigger competitors has copied us. So that's quite a normal thing. I even speak to other founders actually right now that are very, very small right now. Maybe they're like 50K, whatever, MRR, etc. And they're building this niche thing for the space. And already the big boys, so the same competitors that we have, they're asking him directly how to build this, because they want to
Yeah.
build the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to see that, it's just that the big boys don't necessarily always come up with the ideas,
Brightest ideas.
but when they see the small guys, shipping it in the market, they can just go and copy it. So that's just quite a normal thing in this space.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then so product strategy very important. I think everything's usage based. That's also important as a pricing model, rather than charging per seat. And then I would say when you build a website and the flows and like everything kind of from a conversion funnel standpoint, it was very solid for us in the early days, and we scaled to $1 million in ARR with no employees. So literally 3 co-founders, so me on the sales side and the account management side, and then my 2 co-founders that I found on the YC matchmaking platform. They did the tech and the support essentially. And then after $1 million in ARR, we started to hire first support people and then engineers because it was just too much for the other 2 co-founders. And then only after $2 million ARR, we started to hire people on the go-to-market front. So we didn't have a go-to-market team up until the $2 million. And then we kind of finished the first 12 months with $3 million. We're always profitable as a business, but we did raise $500,000 because if you're starting your first initial business, so it was first business for all 3 co-founders. I think in the early days, the problem is that you think that you're going to burn cash because it's a quite normal kind of expectation. We're going to grow, and we most likely going to burn cash, and the model that we build, we also expect to burn cash. So let's raise some money, especially the other 2 co-founders. They were not financially necessarily well off. So that was one kind of factor, and then the other factor that we had is we had cash flow issues actually in the business. So with cash flow issues, one way to solve this is to raise money, but the other one is let's take a loan from the bank. So we tried to take a loan from the bank, and guess what? So if you're in business for less than a year, no banks want to give you a loan. It's a very typical thing. And so Nathan Latka didn't give us a loan. No banks, want to give us a loan. It was just not an option. It doesn't matter, forward-looking institutions or not forward-looking institutions, nobody wanted to give us the money. So that means either we're going to plow the money into the business from somewhere, or we're going to raise money. And then, so at that point, it was I think we had enough reasons to go down the VC path, plus my previous background, working in sales, whatever, I always worked for a VC-backed company. So that path also felt a bit more, let's call it familiar. And the bootstrap path, nothing's wrong with the bootstrap path. It's just that my belief is just less fun. Because I think in order to run what I call big experiments or big stuff, you need to have money in the bank. And you can't be just watching your bank account all the time, It's just more fun. But yes, you dilute, and yes, you have the investors. But I look at investors or, when you get people on board as partners in crime, rather than people that breathe down your neck. So if you can find the right investors, which is what we did, then I think back then we had maybe 10 competitors overall that we were looking at. Today we have 50 investors. Yes. 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 I don't think it's even better. It's kind of, legal trouble. I don't know. Salesforce will send a cease and desist, say, hey, then the name is too similar, whatever, So they're very good in the legal front, So, wow, you have, somebody that you could, have the legal team, essentially, think of it this way, that I don't have to pay for necessarily. Then the other party, that guy or that VC is very good in fundraising. So, if you're looking to raise further rounds, I have essentially
connections.
Yeah, connections, whatever, and being able to help and whatever, drive better valuation, whatever, look at the terms. And then the other one, the third one, was an angel fund. And there's about 50 angels that put money together and decided to put into this. And the angels are not just random angels, but they were actually tech startup CEOs and founders. So then you got these 50, let's call them ambassadors, whatever you want to call them, right? But you can essentially tap into them. And actually one of them is also a millionaire, whatever. But essentially there's also then potentially access to more capital later down the road. But there's like these multiple sort of, like if you're getting people on board, like can they actually bring value to the table? So we also rejected, back then, a lot of the folks were, you know, it's just not. It was just, they would not bring anything to the table. Then don't take the money.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a tough race even back then. Like we had to speak to like at least 100 VCs. This was before the acceleration, before the hockey stick. Like we were speaking to a lot of VCs even back then. Um, and I would say, if you're looking to close a round today, you need to speak to 100 VCs, which is a typical like cold email or whatever sales, conversion rate, right? To get to one, outcome, you need to contact 100 people or like 100 VCs, So yeah.
So, it's from one of your posts that you posted in the past. You said you once cried during your first cold call.
Yes.
So, how did you turn that, like, fear? Like, there must have been time that you had to, like, put your shoes back on. How did you bring yourself together? I believe
Good
you were,
question.
like,
So,
very, very young at that time.
yeah, I was. Yeah, I was. Well, I was in my early 20s. The job was at Google, and it was my first cold call. You speak to an individual, and when you have a headset on and you're speaking to somebody, and that Google's products are not necessarily simple, to sell, and the person was a lot smarter than I was essentially on the other end. And whenever when you jump on your first call, there was a sort of essentially moment of where I just didn't understand what he's even asking me. It was just that sort of friction. I was trying to get help from my teammates, but it was just not going anywhere. So you get into a situation when just nothing's working. It happens, I think to a lot of people that get on call calls for the first time, and they sell something super complicated. Then, you know, that was, memory that literally is there for life, if I'm very honest. Because since that first call, when I cried, I never cried again. Um, so, and I think, you know, I think, practice just makes perfect. I just started to do more, like I just did naturally thousands and thousands of calls, and I just got better at my job, and I got really, really comfortable at speaking to people on the phone and talking about ads, and ad optimization and CTRs and making people spend more money on Google, etc. Um, and but I think not calling it was not an option at Google. Everybody at Google is calling the customers. So you like so you needed to learn how to be good on the phone, particularly because I had sales KPIs so on the phone to make people do stuff essentially, right? And back then, so I'm very competitive. I think that is the thing. So we have these sort of leaderboard at Google. Who is the best rep on the phone? And I want to be at the top. And I think one of the things that you'll realize if if sales for you or not, you're very competitive, and you just want to be at the top. And I think that's what was driving me from crying in the first call to literally getting to the top of the leaderboard. I think like in 3 to 6 months, because I already knew the product like really well by then, and every call was like super comfortable, and I knew every feature and across every vertical and blah blah blah, and then I think that was my first just generally insight into, I would say, the world of sales. This was the first time in my life after completing my university degree back in the UK, that this is something I enjoy, like being competitive. I mean, I was always competitive, but it's the first time that an office job, you have an office job, you do calls, and then you realize you actually like to convince people to do things, and it's something that you enjoy. Um, yeah, I mean, it's not just selling for the sake of selling. It's actually helping people, because naturally anybody that spends money on Google Ads, they want to see higher ROI, right? So they're asking you literally on the call on what to do and etc., how to drive better performance, and why I'm not seeing any conversions, things like that. Because at Google you had a very high churn as well. It's just like maybe similar in this space there. So essentially, if customers are not seeing conversions or in the cold email replies, and whatever LinkedIn, then they will churn. So making sure that if the campaigns are not going well, you need to turn this around. Yeah, I think the only dilemma with Google was always because Google is monopoly. It was, I mean, the customers had to really stick with us. I mean, the only other option back then was just Meta, spending money on Meta. And a lot of customers, Meta was not a channel for them. But back then, I also felt like, I mean, when you're monopoly, it's not really, true sales, because customers will be back, right? So even if they churn, they'll be back. And I think this is what was driving me then, when I left Google after 2.5 years in Dublin, to work in SaaS companies after that. And that's where I think that became true sales in my eyes. Because every company was just smaller and smaller and smaller. And this is why, for example, today, funny enough, we don't hire people from Google today and these sort of big companies. That's because when you work for a company where you're just have monopolized the market, you're not doing true sales. You're more of a consultant that works for a company that has monopolized the whole market, and then whatever you say, the customer kind of has to do it, in a way, because they have no other options. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how it has shifted from the very early days working at Google, where today we would not hire Googlers. Every time when I speak to a Googler, it was called a Googler, so a former Googler, it's just not a fit. It were like miles apart, I think, in terms of running, high velocity, SaaS company with multiple products where things have to move very fast. And at Google, you're more of a sort of this sort of process mindset, or it's already corporate mindset, really, but because it's not anymore as a startup as it used to be. And yeah, so that's kind of a little, I guess, advice just on the hiring front. Don't hire people from the big cool companies, because it's just highly unlikely that it will pan out. So yeah.
Nice. So, given you have decades of experience in sales, you must have been a sales leader sometime, right? So, what was the biggest mistake that you made at that time, and what did it teach you?
So I mean, in my last gig, I was a VP sales with a sales team of 50. And I mean, you make always a lot of mistakes, to be honest. So I'm not sure what will be the biggest one out of all of them. But the way that I think, so when you have a large sales team, so you actually get a lot of employees on board, and you essentially offboard a lot of employees, whether you fire them or they leave. And I would say, every time when somebody doesn't pass probation period, or people don't stick around, it is a mistake in a way, across both the person that the person and the company both made a mistake, because it's not a match essentially. And these mistakes essentially were very frequent. But then it's also quite normal in sales. Sales has a high turnover, the highest turnover company. You typically have that in the sales team. And yeah, but that's more of a highest frequency, I guess, of mistakes of what you make, and that's because you cannot predict whether people are going to be the particular individuals going to be good for your team or not. Yeah. Otherwise, I would say, there's typically three kind of segments I look at: is either people, process, or technology to run a really good company. And then you're typically gonna have some sort of major mistake that you made in one of the three areas. But I always find that if you speak to a lot of founders as well today, typically they're gonna put the biggest mistakes that were made was on the people front. So it's not about the tech or the process. I think that is very, very infrequent. But it's typically something to do with we hired the wrong guy for the job, And I just have a lot of these examples, kind of, So I would say it's more the people front, which is very typical. So.
Okay. And is there a way to remedy that, or it's just you can never know what sort of
I
person
think the problem is you can never know. That is quite true. And so the only way that I figured out what is the best way, what is the most optimal way to hire people, is just simply to hire in what I call on an 80-20 basis. So 80-20 basis means when you're 80% sort of comfortable, or you have essentially conviction that this is the right person for the job, if you have a job for it. So this is the right person for this, or even if you don't have a job, can you add them incremental? They're gonna do a good they're gonna have a good impact. So essentially, you're trying to predict the impact of the person on the business, and at a particular stage of the business. But I would say 80-20 rule. So that means you don't sort of try and de-risk too hardcore. You don't do reference checks. It doesn't matter. I believe. You don't do, I don't know what else you don't do, but, and I always find actually that the best people to hire in any company are the ones that typically ask the best questions rather than what's written on their, CV or LinkedIn profile, etc. You will see very quickly whether the person is fit with your company, the questions that they ask you. That means they've done their research or they're smart, whatever that is. But the quality of the questions is what dictates the probability of or my willingness to get them on board and their probability to pass probation period and then being super successful in the company. I think I observed something similar at Google because I used to hire people at Google as well and a bunch of other companies. And I always like, this is like really good question. I've never thought about this, like you're like, and then they're like, wow, they thought about this question, in this area. Like, and you're like, and there's sometimes some really good questions that you just never thought about working at Google, whatever the company is, right? And it actually challenges you, and you realize that the person that you're talking to just has maybe a slightly different perspective on things, etc., which is good for the business. So you want to hire them because you don't want to have all the same people in the company. So I'll give you an example. Today we have 45 employees, and we have 20 plus nationalities in the company. We have people from Europe, from Latin America, from India, Japan, you name it. And so this cultural melting pot, essentially different perspectives on the same problem, is super valuable, generally. So yeah, I recommend, looking at the best questions, having this, great question, great sort of input into your business, and that really is what should dictate, I think, your willingness to hire that person.
So another question is, how do you help companies figure out which growth channel is going to work for them?
Oh, wow. I typically say, so I'm the guy that will always test everything. If it has some sort of sense to it, I was like, let's go. So right now I have 3 tests running. Right now. With 3 different agencies. We have 3 tests running. Actually, 2 agencies are owning 2 tests, actually. One agency is owning 2 tests, and then another agency is owning a... But essentially, the way that you think about channels or tests, etc., is like, who's going to own these channels, generally, right? So, of course, you want to own as many channels as you can, but then sometimes you just don't have internal competence to own the channel, or you don't have the growth hacker or the GTM engineer, whatever you want to call it. But time is money, and essentially, if you don't test the channel, you're losing out. Essentially, that's how I think about it. So there are some. So, for example, we tested direct mail. So we think the direct mail, in theory, if done correctly, direct mail can generate. It could be ROI positive. So we just tested it, right? Because let's go test it and see what happens, And if it works out, we're gonna do it consistently. We're gonna consistently do direct mail. So we sent out 4,000 literally mails via UPS in the US, and we sent a really fantastic letter. But only one person responded out of 4,000. So naturally, that test has cost us some money. I think if it tests like less than 5K, let's go. Like you don't even think about it. And I think it was less than 5K. So we just went for it, and only one person responded. So that is not a good result. But what I always say is, would you want to retest this? The answer is actually yes, because there are some variables when you're running a test or you're spinning up a channel. Sometimes the person that runs the test, sometimes the process was not the correct, or the tech was not the right. So in that test in particular, the assumption was either that the tech was wrong, that means the list built up was actually wrong, or the addresses. So something was wrong in there is the assumption. Or the person that was running the test was also potentially wrong. Now, but you have to be in a mindset of I think still direct mail is a great channel. So the next time around, for example, we're going to test direct mail. Instead of testing it in the US, we're going to test it in the UK. And instead of testing it as just sending out an envelope, whatever, with a nice message and everything in there, we're going to test, for example, in the second round, say postcards. So it's still the same direct mail, but with postcards is what we're going to send, and we're going to test that. So don't give up always on the channel. Don't always call it dead. If the first test didn't go around, because I think myself. Yeah.
Come back to it after after a set period of time, is it?
Yeah, I would say whenever you have, I guess, capacity or the headspace for it, but I think you just need to target it the right quarters. Don't send it during the summer, for example. Send it during I don't know. Let's say we're gonna test in the UK. That's gonna be September to November, in that period, or I would say March to June, kind of. Like there's some periods where it's a good testing, good time to test. But the reason why you would test is because I'm always thinking to myself, because I also was former VP sales. I have never got a postcard ever. I never got direct mail even. Just never. So as a result, to me, anything that is something like this is a pattern interrupt. If you never got anything, um, and as long as the cost is sort of palatable, why wouldn't you test it? Because somebody will remember that postcard or mail if it's nicely written and etc. Like 100 times, there's 100x recall on the mail than an email.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you try and test it? But yeah, generally, so that's kind of just generally on maybe looking at one single channel, it fails, and then you want to retest. But otherwise, the way that we look at user behavior or how people buy, doesn't matter whether you are in enterprise sales or not. In order to increase your conversion rate, you need to touch that individual or your market in a multitude of different ways, whether that's on Reddit, LinkedIn, cold email, calling up, etc., which is what we do. But can we add what we call another layer on top of that, which can either drive direct response, so meaning we'll book demos, for example, or this channel can assist the other channels, right? So that's how I look at this. And as long as, I think what's important is it has to have scale. So sending direct mail, it has scale, right? Sending an email, it has scale. Doing cold calls, it has scale. Everything has to have scale. So if something doesn't have scale, then we typically try and stay away from it. So I'll give you an example, which is also very unusual, but it has scale. So this quarter, I was saying, I just jumped off the plane. This quarter, I'm attending like 15 events in the quarter, offline events of meeting people. So when they say scale, then events have to have also scale, because what we want to test is like not going to one event a quarter, but we want to go to 10 plus events and then trying to figure out, okay, if we're going to what we call programmatically do offline brand building and attend these different events, what is the impact of that? Because it's important that you have what's called the significant size of a sample so that your input data has statistical significance to make an assumption that this works or doesn't, right? So, yeah, so it has to have scale. It has to have also the software. Are we actually targeting the ICP, so ideal customers? And if the answer is yes, just go for it.
Okay, it reminds me. So, I've been listening to Neil Patel and Eric Shu's podcast, and I wanted to ask, like, if you're going to these events, are you going as a speaker, or just an attendee?
I mix it up. I think 70-80% as a speaker, and 20% as an attendee. So, for example, I was in Vienna last night or today even, and there I was just an attendee. But it's fine. So when you're an attendee, I have a different strategy when I'm an attendee versus a speaker. When I'm a speaker, I'm doing marketing essentially. When I'm an attendee, I do sales, outbound sales. So it's just how you approach the same audience. Are you outbounding, or if you're on stage, you don't have to outbound because everybody has listened to you. But the goal is to touch enough people in the audience, which I would say at least 50%, and then track that within your funnel somehow. So the best way, I think, to track it, which is how do you do attribution, is instead of looking at your Google Analytics, which you can look at, or some other tools, but I think the best way that I found is where do you hear about us data set. That's not like a drop-down menu that most people actually make a mistake. Maybe a question to you: do you know what mistake? What is the what do you think is the top result typically that gets the most yeses? Kind of, where do you hear about you? Do you know?
Not really. Email.
The first result. No, whatever the first
one is. Yeah.
Yes, whatever. So imagine we're gonna put podcasts. So let's say somebody signs up to Salesforge today, and I'm gonna put podcasts
at the top, and they're just gonna click podcasts. Instead, just generate a UTM link for every form if you really want to know where the lead came from.
Yeah, so you can do UTMs. That's one way. There's some attribution softwares out there, like Dream Data, etc. But what we believe is just like let the user just type in whatever they want, and then you're gonna see the juiciest data in your life. People will say like, my boss told me to sign up. I saw your ad on the street, like something like that. Like But this is the most sort of unique data set in terms of attribution, because I'm not necessarily looking. I can bucket the data later, right, with LLMs or with humans. But it's very important for me to know exactly where did you hear about this. And I think one fun fact about our attribution data is there's this one sort of line. It just says Frank, and it's kind of this is just to double down maybe that the brand building or one of the three founders that we have has to be like really really visible, because sometimes you're not really sure why they ended up buying our product, but the only thing that the person can say Frank. And Frank could be on LinkedIn, it could be offline event, whatever, right? So we need to attribute that if we're doing a lot of founder-led sales, founder-led brand building, does it actually drive pipe? And the only way we're going to look at it is you just say Frank, in the open-ended, question. And I think there's other very smart people on LinkedIn that will tell you exactly this. So if you wanna sort of let's go debate this, you don't have to debate this with me. There's other smarter people in marketing than me. They will all tell you that it needs to be on open field, and they're gonna talk about why and etc. and the disadvantage, blah blah blah. But it's so powerful, and I do a lot of crazy stuff with that and with that data. Like you can do a lot of kind of farming of that data, and then you definitely know where to invest money. So somebody today signed up and they put Clay event, and I think it was so Clay event is the one I attended yesterday, and so Clay event it says, and I believe it's the one that I attended yesterday, right? So that's how I attribute it.
Nice. So coming back to it, is this what you call is the one GTM myth most founders believe that they really shouldn't? Putting multiple drop downs for the leads that come in.
Multiple drop downs? What do you mean by that? Like in the sign up form?
Yeah, sign up form.
Yeah, so I mean, like I don't believe you should have a drop down, in terms of where do you hear about us, kind of data. Open field, UTM tracking, and you can use an attribution software because they have some advantages there as well. These are the three ways how you should really track. And I think the other one is, so there's some companies that do a lot of affiliate stuff. There's affiliate kind of softwares, and their tracking also can give you a lot of insights. But you just need to sort of overlay multiple data sets. It's not just one, so multiple data sets to make very good decisions on marketing and sales. Because if you're going to do that, that's how you essentially de-risking. Because if two data sets give you you see patterns essentially, right? So there's something here. If we're doing this, we're generating a lot more, results. If I'm putting some funny video on LinkedIn, we're seeing, suddenly, more spike in traffic or whatever, We also have other things that we track actually, apart from the signups. Today on our website, we receive over 200 calls. So apart from tracking the signups, we also track calls, number of calls that are being done across all of our forges that we have. So that's over 200 today. So we also want to make sure that we offer that, so the ability to call. Plus the other reason, I think the other things that we look at is okay, so maybe the person didn't sign up, right? Or they didn't call us. But we naturally use all these different tools out there on the web where you can de-anonymize the users. And then we switch on our sort of engine, there as well, to go after these individuals. So yeah, building, very sophisticated funnels is like what I call compound funnels is super important. And then kind of supporting the whole funnel with what I would call N810 and Clay build. You will see, conversion rates, you're essentially milking the traffic, what I call, to the max, and having multiple conversion points, multiple ways to capture email, multiple ways to offer value, whether that's a tool, that's a lead magnet on the site, and etc. So yeah, our website today is very highly converting, I would say, versus a typical SaaS website out there on the web.
There's one question around you hiring head of growth. If you want to use it, I'll send you that video as well. So you're hiring head of growth for Forge, right?
Yeah.
So what are the red flags that would instantly knock someone out of the running?
Yeah. So we're always hiring somebody. So head of growth right now is also one of the hot roles that we're looking for. Red flags. Enterprise sales background, very big of a red flag. Essentially, if you've been doing any form of growth or marketing for Enterprise sales are high tickets. It's a very different way of selling. High velocity sales meaning, we onboard hundreds of customers on a monthly basis. So the mindset and being more analytical is like super, super important. The other thing that we stay away from if the person has never done B2B SaaS. So they say that they've done a lot of growth stuff, but they've never done for a B2B SaaS company. We also stay away from that because SaaS companies run in a very particular way. And especially, if you're applying for a head of growth job, you better have worked in a few SaaS companies, or at least one like great SaaS company where you can apply sort of high velocity sales and marketing kind of experience over to us.
Have you been part of an agency in the past, or were you only selling SaaS, or like?
No, I was always only selling SaaS. I've never sold myself, I guess, through sort of an agency and anything but not SaaS. I always say if you want to have some of my time, and some people want to have some of my time, they buy more of my software, so they get some of my time. The more money you pay me, the more of my time you get. So, but no, I think when back in the days when I started Google, the trajectory was just always being in tech, and I just kind of remained in tech for the rest of my life. So.
Cool. So the next question, I think you already answered, but like if you haven't, you can answer again. How are you using AI right now to scale AdForge sales, particularly?
We apply AI or AI agents or automations with AI to scale. So I think the first thing we just look at is, okay, we have a problem, and do we solve it with humans or AI stuff? So let's say on the website today, if you're gonna call us today, you're speaking to a real person, and that makes sense to do that, even though it has a much higher cost and blah blah blah. Now, there are other steps of the funnel where we do not use humans, but we use voice AI agents on the inbound funnel. So voice AI agents are really good when you have a specific context about the individual that you're calling. So when the way that we apply, for example, voice AI agents is, let's say you sign up to a product today, and you don't end up essentially booking a demo with us or buying anything from us. Essentially, you didn't progress and nothing happened, right? And essentially, but these are leads, that sign up, but nothing happened, let's say, after a week or so. But instead of asking humans to call about the same thing and saying the same things, like let's say, for example, I would say, as a human, hey, I saw that you signed up, and did X, Y, Z, but you're always saying the same thing, and then you're trying to extract maybe some intel, book them on a demo, whatever. This behavior is fantastic. This repetitive behavior is fantastic for AI agents, where there's no ambiguity, etc. They're not going to ask some super crazy questions. The questions that they ask are very typical. So that's an example where you should apply voice AI agent. So that means our voice AI agent will call, an individual typically after 7 days, and then if they don't pick up, and not again another 7 days, and then again another 7 days if you don't pick up. So we're gonna do 3 attempts essentially to try and call the user to see, first of all, just to extract why didn't you buy our product, right? So it's fantastic for product development and messaging. If we had any bugs or what's the feedback on pricing or etc. Because you can store that data, right, that you extracted to the voice AI agent and pass it over to product or whatever, the CEO, whoever that is, and then do something with those insights from the user. So you're farming intel at scale. And then typically the second sort of goal of the conversation is to say, okay, I totally get that. Would you like to chat about this, with my colleague? So the colleague is the account exec or the CSM, whatever on the team, and then get them on the call. So these are the 2 conversion actions that the agents has to achieve, and you're just doing it like clockwork, So there's essentially no human error. It works pretty nicely. I can listen to every conversation that was discussed, and even if people say, "Hey, is this an AI agent?" The agent says yes, and they still continue to have a conversation with the agent. But this is quite normal, I think, for our company, like because we're an agentic company, so we're also an agent. So some people expect the agent to be there, and they're curious, what the agent will say. But yeah, I think the strategy there, I have cloned my own voice. So it literally says, hey, this is Frank calling from the Forge. I saw that you signed up, a week ago, blah, blah, blah. I was wondering, how was your experience like, right? So this is how the conversation starts, and then you just progress from there on. So that's one example. But otherwise, I think the other sort of AI things are on N8N. So we have over 300, I think, right now, N8N workflows. So many of them do use do make an API call to an LLM, and then something happens, and et cetera, et cetera. And the reason why we're building so much, I guess, is to reduce the need to hire more people, right? It allows us to be profitable and still scale. And if something, if something breaks, we're gonna get informed. If something goes good, we're gonna get informed, right? So that sort of feeling I had back in my days at Google, where everything was automated. But then you need to use a bunch of engineers to do that. Today, you can just spin up N810, hire what I call an N810 guy, and he will start building for you. Um, and yeah, I think the initially kind of the founders kind of have requests, on what to build. But then later down the road, you just have the Slack channel, which is called, N810 Ideas, and then any employee in the business could go in and make a request to kill something that's repetitive in their daily work life.
So, how can small teams beat big competitors like you were talking about when you started Mailforge in sales meeting and pipeline building?
How you can beat competitors.
Yeah, how a small team can beat competitors.
So I would say smaller teams, again, smaller teams can use, AI and AI agents, right, to outcompete competitors that maybe are only using human labor. Smaller teams can have better customer support than the big guys. So today, our competitors have, according to our data and what we hear in the market, worse support than our support. And there's some things that we do to make sure that the support is good. So we look at things like SLA, so how quickly people respond. We look at 24/5 coverage, for example, across the world. That's what we do today. We try and understand why competitor support sucks, and so then optimize against that, right? So, or why it's good, etc. Right? So support is like a huge thing. So sometimes you can just win against a competitor when you're just doing this little aspect just really, really well. Or you kind of going above and beyond, which means, as an example, you are onboarding your top customers into a Slack mutual channel, for example. You just do that very aggressively. So keeping your customers sort of very, very close. What would be the other things? When you're just much faster, right, than competitors. So let's say with competitors, you may need the call may happen only next week, a demo call. But with that smaller player, it is literally today. Then the other problem I think with the big guys is typically, let's say you have the product roadmap and you have you have suggestion. So sure, your suggestion will will go into the product roadmap, but it will have a little impact against that big product roadmap that the big guys have. However, when you're working with smaller guys, whenever you give some feedback, there's not a lot of people giving feedback, right? So they typically try and act on the. Yeah, you're flexible. You can implement that feedback. So essentially, the software is being built based more on your requirements than requirements of thousands of other, customers that company has. So there's nothing wrong, I think, with the small guys. And I support always, small guys and even small competitors that are popping up to us and stuff like that. Because the market is just generally big enough. That's how I look at it. So we work with a lot of competitors, by the way. And because there are always different ways to solve the problem, right? So doesn't have to be one way. So we solve the problem in this way, but then somebody else may solve the problem in a slightly different way, right? So and it's all about giving customer choice. And I think at the end of the day, everybody's growing more or less. There are some companies that just die, and I think the reason why companies die is the founders were not strong, like in the first place. Like whenever I think a company dies or a startup dies, the founding team is not like super strong in our space, at least. So I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody builds a go-to-market software, but they've never been in sales. Just things like that. So I see a lot of companies die like that. They say they know how sales works, and then I can't even. Whenever they go on a podcast or something, I don't believe they do know how sales works. It's just things like that you just know that it's not a strong co-founding team. And it could be also similar for other kind of spaces, right? So what attracts me really much, to work even with smaller teams and competitors, etc., is when they know what they're talking about, So either a very strong engineering team and plus sales background or whatever, or they know the problem very, very in depth. Because I always say, it's like, I'm going to bring up an example of what Google pays, say, Apple over $30 billion every year to make sure that Google Chrome is installed on an Apple device, right? So as a default browser. It's kind of similar, like in this space where there's a lot of different plays. And I think what is very important is just not look at your competitors, but potential partners. Essentially what I call bacon. Look at your competitors as bacon, not as veggies, So then suddenly you're in a very different mindset. And because I always believe you can make a lot more bacon together than being apart. And the companies, there are a bunch of companies that actually never work with anybody. And the companies that never work with anybody, they're much worse off. Yeah, so that's kind of generally, I would say, on the space itself, because it has like hundreds of different players in the space. So it's very diverse, and this is why I believe it's just important to build such a huge even sales technology space, like just partners, in the space. So yeah.
Cool. So, what's your favorite viral movement that happened when running outbound campaigns or posting on LinkedIn? If the one that you
I mean,
remember.
the most viral kind of general trend I think this year or last year is just clay. So I think you hear a lot, and it's a bit of a definitely, you know, the wave. I think the other one is the NA10. But I think I typically memorize something that's like maybe less mainstream, and so we, for example, do a lot of crazy viral
Automations.
posts. Yes, so
Right.
and automations and stuff like that, and um, but yeah, I think my favorite one was probably by Adam Robinson, him going up against Sixth Sense. There's drama. I think the post that I like the most is there's drama, there's conflict. That's what it drives. So I think there's a few select type of posts on LinkedIn that do really well from a virality standpoint, stuff like that. Drama is one of them, right? Two boys kind of or two companies going at each other. Another example is like Apollo versus ZoomInfo, and stuff like that. And then the other ones would be like what I call in the category of edutainment. Essentially, you look at the post and it's like very funny, but it educates you.
Yeah.
Essentially, you're consuming that content, you're having a good time, but you learned about that tool and you didn't perceive that as a you
Just
know
entertainment.
yeah, you perceive that as entertainment, and then you learn about it too, and you're like happy, and you're engaging with it, right? Instead of saying, "Oh, this is not one of those posts." So that stuff sort of that does really well. I'm a big fan of people like Will Aitken, maybe on LinkedIn if somebody knows. He does a good job, but there's like a lot of people that do a good job, and yeah, because they all of them are former sales reps,
Salespeople.
uh, but somehow they're just very good on camera, and then they became LinkedIn superstars. Let's go that way, or influence, right?
Nice.
And yeah, so I do also a lot of that as well because the reason why you need to do that, you need to warm up naturally the audience before you reach out. So that's why I post literally daily. Well, yeah, daily. Well, it's at least Monday to Friday, and but you're trying to also be creative and kind of share from your founder life what's happening and maybe something that you'll launch and stuff like that, and kind of mixing the product announcement with something funny. So let's say we did a Star Wars skit, or we did a Margaret Robbie a video where I was in a bathtub, talking about data, and stuff like that. And that's not AI based. A lot of people said, "Was this AI based?" Like, no, I was literally in the bathtub talking about data. So I would say, if you want to figure out what you're trying to put on LinkedIn is like a real pattern trap, show it to your girlfriend, and if she doesn't say "Oh my God," then you did a bad job. So she has to
Cool.
say "Oh my God." So when I showed her that video of the me being in the bathtub, she's like "Oh my God." I was like, Exactly,
Bam.
that's what we need." So
I
people don't stop. There's like, "Oh my God, what did I just see?" I saw Frank in the
yeah.
bathtub. And so this sort of effect has a really very strong brand recall. Um, and then the other kind of example I think which is super strong is and other people can replicate it if you want. But back then I think like a year ago there was a lot of a lot of bad press about AI SDRs. And what I did not a year ago but like earlier this year. And what I did on the April Fools, I said that I was fired. So investors fired me because I was cooking the books. So all my crazy success it's all fake. I was just trying to raise Series A. So that was the most viral post that I had, and so other people also kind of have these like interesting angles, etc. And yeah, but kind of knowing how to do it in a way that it's like oh my god, or like drama, or like edutainment, it's not easy. It takes
Mm. It
uh,
takes time. It
takes time.
takes, yeah, ideas come in when you're not even doing anything. I'll give you an example. So, me and my past client, we were selling course in India
Mm,
on how to, like, be a better freelancer, how to sell to international clients. And me and my sister, we were watching this movie that basically is the Indian version of The Godfather.
mm,
And she was kind of giving me ideas. You can, like, kind of put that as an ad for the course, and we did like 6 or 7 ads for the course. And funny enough, the characters in the movie, we had lookalikes for everyone in the team itself, so we didn't have to hire anyone. I still have those in my folder, but yeah, it was a funny experiment.
Yeah, because people, get entertained when it resonates with a movie or something else. Doesn't yeah. But in our case, yeah, it's a lot of movies and right now what we're testing next, we haven't done that yet, is Sora. So the video LLMs. And doing something cool out of that. So, what could you do with video LLMs, right? Something cool that could go viral on LinkedIn. So, kind of think about it, right? So, I highly recommend because as of 3 months ago or so, 4 months ago, so very kind of, I would say, still recent. Suddenly, AI is so good on videos where you could, do like crazy ads or video ads or something on LinkedIn, funny, like whatever. I'll give you an example. What was the most recent one? That I found really kind of cool example of a kind of video LLMs, which is a rap song that was made.
Yeah.
I think it was the app was Suno, and they use video LLMs as well. But like you can make a rap song, which is like just looks cool and can be done in multiple languages as well, so English and German, etc. Um, yeah, so all of this new tech just unlocks creativity, I would say, and I have not seen still. I still think there's a lot to come. So I because I'm kind of playing in my head. What else could we do with video LLMs? What could be another thing that if you could just imagine this, let's put that into video LLM and let's just make it.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, that's how I kind of think about because a lot of channels are just saturated. Like, how can you stand out of the crowd? How can you be creative? So that creative marketing piece is also super important because it just drives 100x brand recall than an email, say, or something else. So then I think the just ultimate strategy is to blend these two things. So yes, I still gonna send 10,000 emails per week, whatever I do right now. I gonna still reach out to LinkedIn to 3,000 people. That's what we do. Like it's a typical, behavior in outbound. But then in tandem, I will layer in creative marketing. So when a person will look at, let's say, at my email or LinkedIn DM that we would send them, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I've seen something from Frank on LinkedIn. I think I know you guys from somewhere." There's a lot of people like, "I know you from somewhere. I know the force from somewhere," or "Oh, I think I know Frank," or "I met Frank," whatever that is. Right? So it's important that these two things are coming together because then suddenly you're supercharging the outbound channel. So the reason why for us, for example, our outbound reply rates are higher than I would assume most companies in the world is we do a lot on the kind of the branding piece and like Clay, is similar. Imagine that if Clay sends you a cold email, of course you're very likely to respond due to the huge brand that they've built up.
Yeah.
So brand building is an important piece, and you'll find that as the company grows, brand is more important than anything else, really.
Yeah.
But you need to build that brand from early on. So I've been building the brand before starting Salesforce. So I was like, guys, I've left my job as a VP sales and I'm working on something. So people are already curious, what is Frank building, etc. And then you're giving these little bits and bits, over time. So it's important that there's this sort of build up of the brand
Yeah.
because it will take you and kind of accelerate you further and further. Um, yeah, and that's the one of the kind of key things typically then in the future that brand power that drives the acquisition on inbound typically. So yeah,
All right, so I know it's been like more than the time requested, but I highly appreciate you being here and
no
being
worries.
so informative with your answers. So just gonna be like a couple sections. There's gonna be a meme review and then some, quick questions like one-liners. So let me just share my screen real quick.
I love memes. I used to send a lot of memes in my
Ah,
sales. And,
some might just be from your own team,
yeah,
like
it could be. Yeah.
yeah. So
Um,
I'm just giving you. Can you see the screen right now?
yes, yes, I
So
can see it. Yeah,
you remember the scene? He says
yeah,
"Fugazi, Fugazi." It's
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
even real, right? So
Yeah.
they're talking about uh, what their new lead, what they think about it, about their new lead. So it's not a lead unless they convert.
Mm.
So This is basically a meme generator. So it tells you
I
their
think the best meme
interests.
generator that I know or so far is I think it's called supermeme.ai. I think that's the one.
Nice, nice.
Somebody wants, somebody wants to generate a bunch of memes and do stuff for that. Because yeah, if you're doing them manually, people don't have the creativity to do them, so just go to supermeme.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I
that's
have been like a meme veteran.
yeah.
I was using 9gag way
Ah,
before. Like I I made crypto investments based on whatever I saw on 9gag. Imagine and LinkedIn. Imagine that, but in meme format. Every news was in meme format, even today.
at Google, we had an internal meme gen as well, and so you could understand exactly what happens at Google without saying this. So you
Nice.
just look at memes, and literally, so you know when the layoffs are coming, you know they're coming due to
Yes.
by looking at the memes.
Yes.
It's like brace, for the winter, whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Oh yeah.
interesting just to see like
Yeah.
when you introduce memes internally. So yeah, um,
Sent an email and got no response. Are they busy or ignoring me? You have to have like, 7 follow-ups, I guess, before
or
you
I'm in the
give up.
spam folder.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or that.
That's another one. So
Cold email promises. Speaking
but,
of 9gag, this was from 9gag itself.
yeah,
Hello,
the
Dennis.
Nigerian prince. I still get these. I got one even today, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um,
Why did my email not get delivered? That's the dilemma, like everyone that's in cold email, they have. Bad
yeah,
practice. I mean, these are funny options, but it could be anything, right?
but
Bad
sometimes
practice.
it's a thing. I think I'm landing in spam. I don't know I'm landing in spam. Like it's sometimes a thing. Um, so yeah.
How I see my cold emails, how prospects see my cold
This is a
emails.
good one. This is a good one. This is something that I would put, on my LinkedIn post because I think this is edutainment. Like this is a perfect
Yeah,
example of that. Um, because um, but the way that I look at spam is just you just you just have a poor offer. Like as an example, like that's why they perceive it as spam. But I for example today have 100 plus problems as a CEO, right? So if you would reach out about one of my 100 problems that I have right now, I mean, I do respond to cold emails, by the way. So I do business through somebody cold emailing me. But I wish people would just reach out to me about the problems that I have rather than just whatever.
yeah.
So that's why you're in the spam bucket for me. If you didn't hit one of my problems and you're the burger on the left hand side, right? So when you're hitting, so some people are like reaching out about some cool stuff, and then there's some companies where they're like, "Yo, you're never reaching out to me. I'm not sure why you're never reaching out to me. Why I never received a cold email from you?" I literally said that to somebody
Nice.
yesterday. Why didn't you send me a cold email about what you do? And he apologized. So
Nice.
okay.
Right. Waiting for SDRs to finally start personalizing outreach. I mean,
Mm.
they have started, I guess, now.
The thing is that a lot of people are so fatigued with the emails and the personalization, so they think that first name is personalization or like company name, whatever. That's
No,
not personalization. Like, so
that's
this
not.
is why a lot of people you're not personalizing. You're just putting some variables inside it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's mm,
See you with the frog.
yes, it's just tougher, right? Because the more AI is out there, essentially, the more stuff gets personalized. It's harder to do personalization, so it actually looks like really personalized, and
Yeah.
it makes them want to respond. It makes them want to, you look at an email, and I always say you'll be stupid not to reply. You'll be stupid to say no to this. How do you write an email copy that makes them stupid? You know,
Yeah.
to say no to that.
Yeah, coming to that, me when name doesn't get back to me, because all you did was do that one variable.
Yes.
Any thoughts on my last email? Buyer. Do you know how many emails I get in a day? I don't read
Yes.
my
So I
emails.
always say don't do these. Like, this is one of the worst follow-up emails. Hey, any thoughts? Like thoughts? Question mark. Um, I always say if you want to send a follow-up, send me an email with more reasons why I should, respond, right?
Yeah.
Um, so like in my case, I always say, you reached out about problem one. Maybe I don't have that problem. Which in the follow-up email mention maybe try if you can solve my problem, another problem. So mention problem two in the follow-up email, and then the third email problem three, as an example. Or in my case, I have multiple products. sell product one in email one, product two in email two, and product three in email three. You're giving just me more reasons, or you're increasing probability of essentially getting a reply back. So, but never do this.
Yeah. Sending an email with a meme, sending a long email about product features. So, which side are you on? Because I know people in your team do send memes.
Yeah. And it's just one person, to be honest. But like, I just say, do whatever you think works for you. I'm in that kind of category of like, you're in sales, you have commission target, whatever, right? And every person is different, and I'm different to you. And you know what I do? I do voice notes. That's my thing on LinkedIn. And you know when I do voice notes? When I'm driving in a car, actually. When I'm stuck in traffic, I just pick up my phone. It's like, oh, I saw a prospect. I just gotta quickly, like send him a voice note. It's kind of these weird things, and it works for me, but nobody else does voice notes in my team. So.
Yeah. Alright,
Oh,
sales manager when you ask them for any kind of getcha. Cool. It's a cold calling one, but like it landed in this folder, so yeah, just gonna edit it out. Say cold email.
yeah.
Waiting for prospect to reply to my cold email. That's a classic. Me waiting for a reply. You forgetting after. Who wants to make a lot of money making sales? Who wants to make cold calls? Another cold call, but yeah, we can change. Oh, okay, this is the one that like completely describes what's the problem with follow up, where
Mm.
they
Oh, I
just say
mentioned, yeah.
bots.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me checking if you have answered. This is a good one. I think this was taken from your team member.
Mm.
Thoughts is a bad follow up in 24, 5, 6. Yeah,
Yeah.
cold email sent, cold email no response. First follow up no response. 50th follow up no response. I mean,
Mm.
50 is a bit too much, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Me getting ready is sending.
10 prospect ignoring. Yeah,
Yeah.
cold calling, spam email from bot.
Mm.
My email is well written, reviewed, and ready
Oh,
to
I used
send.
to do this actually. You know what was my strategy? It was my previous gig. So I would literally send off an email, and then 5 minutes later, I send a second email immediately, and then I have a attachment actually in there. So in the second email.
Nice,
So then people
nice.
do perceive that it's actually a real email. So I have never received the strategy myself. Like, but if somebody wants to, and that worked really well back then. So if you have some sort of attachment that you want to send in a follow up, then you send it after literally 5 minutes with this thing in there and have the attachment, whatever that is. So.
Nice. It reminds me, like some people, they like I get a lot of meta ads of coaches and stuff. So there's one ad that stuck because that
Mm.
person used AI, and instead of saying lead, it said led,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the best ad he made because people were picking out the mistake within
Yeah,
that ad, and people were
that,
clicking because of that.
that's what I do in the cold email copies as an A/B test. Just to get more replies back. I on purpose have a typo in the subject line on purpose. People think
Nice.
people don't like essentially it's how I combat. Like they don't understand it's not so they don't think it's like automated or whatever. Because if it has a typo, then you don't think it's automated. You think it's coming from a real human. So then I by on purpose just put a typo on the subject line.
Nice.
So yeah.
Pitch slapping in cold calling, pitch slapping in cold emails, pitch slapping in LIDMs, pitch slapping LinkedIn connection. Wow.
The only
I
thing I,
mean,
I, I
basic.
never to do is never to write anything in connection request, to be honest. So
Yeah. I mean, you shouldn't pitch slap in the first outreach ever, whatever you're using. Just pitch for a call, right?
mm.
Yeah. Trendy social media ads and content, trying to focus on prospecting.
Nice.
Sending email with it. I think once again asking if it's a good time. This is a classic one.
Hmm.
You here. That's a great point. 3 times in the close with some
Come on.
other time. Must have happened to you.
Yeah, it happens to everybody, I would say.
Yeah.
Who's been in sales for a while.
Then you try to close a deal on cold call.
I mean, it has happened to me, by the way. I closed somebody on a cold call. They're literally like, all right, I want to just go ahead and buy this. And they're like, okay, so just go to this website and you wait for them literally on the call and they go and buy your stuff. It has happened to me personally as well.
Nice.
Um,
As you're preparing to make another cold call
yeah.
after getting rejected, yelled at, threatened with legal charges, that's a good one. So I'll give you a breakdown. So Michael Gardner is one of my friends and my, clients, and he has his school community,
Yeah.
and he shared that he actually has a folder of all the legal threats he has gone with his cold emails.
Mm.
And they're so funny. It's not just legal. It's like, I'll kill you and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're all getting them, right? Inevitably,
Yeah.
if you've been sending cold emails for like, over a decade like I did, you will get some, legal threats as well from different companies. Even competitors, by the way, as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Accepting rejection. Cold call, cold email.
Mm.
Yeah. One more cold email. How do you get my email ID? This was a famous meme from cricket. I don't know if you watch
Yeah.
cricket or not, but yeah.
Yeah, I did. Sometimes. But yeah, it's a good one when you cold email someone.
And though they don't even read it.
Yeah, I mean, I know friends of mine. What they do is, let's say they have a lot of unread emails. They just select all and just delete. Some
Yeah.
people just do that. So yeah. I mean, the
Send
most evil thing I know that people do is they subscribe to a newsletter and then they mark that newsletter as spam.
Yeah, that's so bad.
That's so evil.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just
Then
unsubscribe. Why you gonna go mark it as spam? Yeah, send a
yeah,
cold
hey, there's
email
this
straight up.
unsubscribe button in Gmail. Could just click on that and then you're
Yeah,
done. But no,
yeah,
people just click on spam just because it's just on purpose. So, yeah.
yeah. Follow up, call back.
Mhm.
I personally do a combination because sometimes people are not going through their email as much. So if
Yeah,
I get a number, I try to call them as well.
yeah, I would do, to be honest, both. I would click the both
Yeah,
buttons. So I would just follow up and then call them as well. Because, if it's just going to take you like a few seconds, then why not? So yeah.
mm,
I don't know who
yeah.
you are.
But I won't stop emailing you until you respond. What's a good number for you? For me, it's like 7 outreach efforts or 7 follow-ups, and it's not like 7 cold email follow-ups. 7 follow-ups with different channels. But what's a good number
Um,
for you?
so 2, 3 emails initially because email scales best.
Yeah,
Then LinkedIn connect with a blank connect, and then 2 DMs. Actually, pacing best case actually one a week, like one message a week, because they don't perceive it like if you're sending essentially 2 messages within the week, they think it's automation. Like that's how humans think these days. But if you're just sending one a week, you're totally fine. And then yeah, you could be laying in. We do cold calls as well. We do about $2,000 a week. Um, yeah, but I would say definitely at least 5, 6 touch points for sure. With a prospect, it's not even in a sequence, to be honest. We don't always kind of have it all in one sequence and call and links and stuff. No, we just layer it like the same audience, but I just added it to an email sequence and then to a LinkedIn sequence and then also to a cold calling sequence. 3 separate, and you'll find that it actually doesn't make much of a difference when you're doing actually things at scale. So yeah. Um, yeah, but then with
nice,
some like key accounts, we also do like WhatsApping as well. We just WhatsApp people. So yeah.
nice.
When you send an email and you get send box, so you know kind of.
Oh,
Yes.
oh, this is an
Do
old
that
one.
like
Yeah,
just to look like how it actually looked like. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, that's what people do in our software. They want to see how it looked like when it was sent out. So they want to go to send box.
Me fixing the estimate my BDR put together. My BDR fixing the email I put together. Email marketing? Let me know. Dude, that's an email follow up. How can we increase our startup user base? Cold email, paid ads. Let's add a new feature. That's, yeah. My startup doesn't need marketing. You're clearly dumber. Is there a startup that doesn't need marketing?
OpenAI,
Yeah. So you,
ChatGPT, whatever.
yeah. So you started a startup. How's the marketing going? My startup doesn't need marketing because you have an amazing product. Startup founders, new features. My, are you a startup or SaaS company? I ain't reading all that. I'm happy for you though, or sorry that happened, dude. Startuppers writing a cold email to a VC.
Yeah, that's what I was doing
Yeah,
back in my days.
damn. And 10 people looking at the email before sending it?
No, to be honest, like it was just me. But to be honest, I get a lot of cold emails right now today. This VCs now are cold emailing me.
Nice.
Every week I receive 10 cold emails from VCs at least. Um, all trying to invest in everything, whatever. You're not
Yeah.
an ass, but if you miss the ass. Yeah.
I know how to write cold emails. Spams. Prospect ignoring a cold email. The remaining 56 steps left in the sequence. When you realize no one responded to your cold email campaign. Oh, that's the end of it. Alright. So, rapid fire. I mean, I don't know how old you are, but you look like somewhere between 40 to 50, but you have a lot of energy, right? So, what do you take? Like tea, coffee, something else?
Typically five cups of coffee on average per day, with two or three monsters on top of that,
Dang.
Monday to Friday.
Most overrated SaaS metric that
Overrated.
no one should, like,
Overrated. MRR.
MRR. Okay. Is it gonna be ARR then?
No, no, because there's a saying: revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. All I want to know is what's your gross margin,
Nice.
not your MRR. I don't care about. There are companies on the internet that say they have 10 million in ARR. You don't know what their gross margin.
Profit is. Yeah. Cool.
Their
So,
margin, their margin is 10%. So yeah.
so best late night tactics to fix your pipeline when things aren't working. You just wake up and I gotta do this to fix the pipeline and then sleep.
So my answer is we follow this acronym ABS. Always be shipping, always be sending, always be selling. So the second one is we always launch sequences. We launch large scale sequences every day, with thousands of individuals. So every day when if I'm struggling or if there's not enough activity levels, I need to launch more. Um, that's what I think about. I think all day long. Getting good lists with good messaging, that it's not that easy. But yeah.
Cool. So let's say you have 10K and you have a month to spend on in the forge. What's what growth experiment are you gonna run?
The number one is I will extract competitive followers of my competitive followers, and if I have a better product, faster or cheaper product, I will just go after that audience. That's the
Cool.
best 10K spent, um,
Cool.
for any company that has competitors. We all have competitive things, yeah.
Cool. So a couple around career and future vision. What skills do you think every founder should have before they hire for growth roles? Because you were the one who, didn't instantaneously hire for a growth role, right?
Yeah,
So
they need to know how to sell.
they need to know how to sell. How do you
They
spot
have
if an idea is going to scale or flop? Or you still like, it's just a gut
scale
feeling?
or flop. If you're speaking to 10 people and nobody's buying, like essentially you're speaking to a lot of people, but nobody's buying, like nobody's willing to. They say that they're interested, but nobody's buying. It's most likely a flop. Only if people pull out their credit card, there's something there. So.
Okay. Now, other than SaaS, do you have any personal project coming in 2026 that you want to talk about? It can't be SaaS.
Personal project? No, not no. I always say the best way to focus is to defocus. That's why I don't do anything else apart from SaaS.
Nice. Okay. So now there's basically a question from the people watching, right? You know, people watching who want to go and get into growth, GTM or sales. What's the first step they should take today?
If they want to grow in the space,
Yeah, either GTM or sales.
you need to binge watch a lot of podcasts, videos, and of different people on YouTube, people that run very sophisticated systems. You need to binge watch like a lot to get even into the mindset to unlock imagination of what's possible and the scale that you need to. When I tell people the scale that I operate as a business, 99% of people freak out. They have never seen anything like this in terms of the scale and the number of people that we have. Like, so you need to unlock that imagination. So just binge watch a lot of content, a lot of
Yeah.
crazy people on YouTube. There's a lot of crazy people on YouTube there, or whatever. So yeah.
So you're more of a podcast guy.
Even podcasts we do at scale. So this year I did over 50 podcasts, just to give you an idea.
I mean,
So
as a consumer, like you do
I
consume podcasts or books.
yes, yeah, well, smart people, but there's many different smart people. So I typically try and listen to people where I'm trying to build up knowledge as a founder. People that come to mind, like there's many people, but like hundreds of them. But like one would be Kyle Pollard, or could be that sort of person, or could be Jason Lemkin, who talks about how to build enterprise grade companies. I'm in his webinar every Wednesday, for example, with other founders, hundreds of them. So you need to because unless I consume content from other smart people, I'm never gonna up my game,
Yeah.
and I don't think I'm that sophisticated um, yet for what we need to build. So I need to up my game because I know I'm not perfect. So you need to know what you're good at and what you're bad at, what your weaknesses are and what your strengths are, and then what do you do about your weaknesses. So typically you say hire people to take over your weaknesses, but some things I have to own them, hence I need to learn about them. And accessing smart people is hard, so listen to them. Like they should share knowledge free for you. So all you have to do is listen. That's it.
Yeah. All right. That is basically it. I thank you so much for being with us. And we obviously know your LinkedIn. We know the URLs to Forge. But is there any other URL that you want to put in? Like, people should go to check you or your workout, or is that it?
No, I mean, there's a lot of things that we do, but if people are really curious to understand the all the things we do, just go to salesforge.ai/stack. So we call it the Forge stack. There's like 7 products that explains we call it Apple-like ecosystem of products that we're building. Um, yeah, um, that's probably the only interesting place I think that I would go to.
Awesome. Uh, thanks, Frank. Thanks again to taking out the time. But yeah, it was awesome. I
Thanks for
basically
having me.
learned a lot. But yeah,
Yes. Cheers.
bye. May the force be with you. May
The
the
Forge
force
will
be
be. Yeah.
with you. Bye. Have, have a good one. Bye.